In this video, I want to show you how to play every jungler in MLBB. There are so many heroes that can be played in the jungle. However, in this video, I'll only be covering heroes that actually make sense as junglers. So if a hero isn't included, it's probably because they're not really comfortable or effective to play in the jungle. Also, if a new hero was released after this video was made, they might not be included. Some heroes may also get reworked or have their gameplay changed after this video was made. The heroes are listed in alphabetical order from A to Z, making it easier for you to find the hero you want to learn. All right, enough yapping. Let's get straight into the video. For the first letter, A, we have Alice. Alice is a semi-mage tank hero based on her primary role. She's mainly used to absorb enemy damage, allowing your teammates to freely deal damage. And because she's also a semi-mage, she can deal quite a lot of damage while still being very sustainable during team fights. For her passive, Alice has an area of effect regeneration ability like this, which deals magic DPS, and also heals Alice herself. To trigger her passive, you can use skill 1 or skill 2 to gain 1 stack, while her ultimate gives you 2 stacks at once if both phases hit any target. And when I say any target, I mean literally any entity in the game, whether it's a minion, jungle creep, turtle, or even an enemy hero. For skill 1, Alice throws a ball of energy in the direction you aim, and if you press the skill again, she teleports to the ball like this. And for skill 2, Alice creates an AoE like this, and if it hits an enemy, it slows them by 70% for 1 second. For her ultimate, Alice releases a very large AoE that immobilizes enemies hit by it for 1 second. When she casts her ultimate, Alice also gains crowd control immunity and 50% damage reduction until the ultimate ends. The combo is quite simple. You can throw skill 1 at a group of enemies, then immediately use your ultimate followed by skill 1 again to surprise them. For farming, you can start with skill 2 since it deals high damage and has a fast cooldown. Once you reach level 4, immediately rotate to the nearest lane and help your teammates so you can secure the objective more easily. I recommend going to the EXP lane since the first turtle spawns near it. And if the enemy jungler comes to help, just keep fighting, because Alice is pretty hard to deal with, especially in the early game. And for objectives, make sure to throw skill 1 into suspicious bushes to get vision and see which enemies are hiding there. If you're confident enough to push forward like this, especially around the first turtle, then go for it, because there aren't many enemy heroes that can kill Alice quickly in the early game. Because of her strong early game, don't waste Alice's early game power spike. If you see an enemy who's far away from their team, immediately pick them off. Once you reach the late game, enemies can burst you much more easily, especially heroes with strong 1 combo like Kadita. And for team fights, you can use the combo I explained earlier to surprise the enemy from a distance. And because this hero is a semi-tank, here are some heroes that can counter her. Next, we have Alpha. Alpha is a pure fighter hero with high damage because his skills can already deal true damage when they hit an enemy with Beta. On top of that, his passive allows Beta to deal additional true damage, essentially adding another instance of true damage to his skills. To activate Beta, Alpha needs to hit the enemy with any 2 of his 3 skills, which are Ultimate, Skill 1, or Skill 2. Each skill hit gives him 1 stack, and once he reaches 2 stacks, Beta is activated. For skill 1, Alpha fires a straight line attack in the direction you aim, and Beta also helps by firing a straight line attack in the same direction. For skill 2, Alpha unleashes a fan-shaped area attack, and Beta also helps by attacking like this. For his ultimate, Alpha targets an area like this. The area behind the landing point pulls enemies toward the landing point when you release the button. Alpha dashes to the landing point and pulls enemies in that area with him after landing. Beta helps by shooting 5 times in the landing area. There's also a small detail when Alpha is about to use his ultimate. Beta will be spinning like this. For the combo, you can use your ultimate to pull enemies toward you and group them up like this. Or you can use it to chase the enemy backline and follow up with skills 1 and 2 to deal more damage. For farming, you can use skill 1 because its short cooldown allows you to trigger Beta more frequently. And if there are enemies grouped closely together, especially if they're not your counters, just fight them because Alpha is very strong in the early to mid-game. And for objectives, don't use your ultimate on the objective itself. Alpha is quite sustainable because you can save your ultimate and use it whenever something unexpected happens. Whether you need to escape like this or dash toward an enemy who's trying to steal the objective. For team fights, don't be afraid to use your ultimate, because Alpha Ultimate has a very fast cooldown. However, make sure there are no high crowd control heroes nearby when you use it, since it's Alpha only escape skill. And if you still have a lot of HP, keep fighting, especially if the enemy mage is too far from their turret. So if you come up against Alpha, you can counter him with this hero because he has limited escape options and is also vulnerable to burst damage. Next, we have Eamon. Eamon is a typical pure assassin. With this hero, you can disappear like a real assassin, making him quite annoying to deal with because he can sometimes become invisible in bushes. This makes him really good at picking off enemies. Eamon passive allows him to camouflage like this. And in this position, besides camouflage, you also get a small heal, movement speed, and gain shards. For skill 1, Eamon throws a dagger at the entity you're aiming at and enters camouflage. It also gives you additional range like this, and each hit can recharge 1 stack. If your shard stack is full, you can also use the skill to cast it. For skill 2, Eamon throws a dagger into the air or at an entity in the direction you aim, and he enters camouflage. You also get additional range like this, which can recharge 1 shard stack with every hit. If your shard stack is full, you can also use skill 2 to trigger it. For the ultimate, it's a little more complicated. When you hit an enemy with the skill or 5 shards, your passive adds shards to your ultimate, and it has a maximum capacity of 25 shards for now. If you don't hit an entity for 5 seconds, the shards decrease to 19, then decrease again to 13 after another 5 seconds. This can sometimes feel random, depending on how you manage your passive. And if you don't have any shards, the ultimate will only deal a small amount of damage like this. And to outsmart this, you can keep hitting the enemy tank or creeps with skill 1 or 2 and wait until your shards reach 5 before using a basic attack. Just judge whether it's safe to do so or not. If you're not confident about doing it against the tank, then use the other skill 1 or 2 that you haven't used on the enemy yet. Keep doing this until your shards are full, then target their backline. For the combos, I've prepared 2 here. The first combo is mainly for ambushing. Make sure you've already used up your 25 shards so that your shards are stacked at 13. Then, use skill 1, basic attack, skill 2, basic attack, and finish with your ultimate. The second combo is to collect your shards first and make sure skill 2 is ready. Since there are a lot of crowd control heroes in the current meta, This combo is highly recommended because it's very safe to use. After collecting your shards, use skill 1 to disappear. Then wait until you have 5 shards. Throw skill 2 at your target. Then immediately use your ultimate. If they're still alive, you can basic attack them until your passive activates. Then use skill 1 to escape. For farming, use skill 1 because it has a short cooldown. To play Aimon effectively, make sure you frequently hit the enemy tank with your skills so your ultimate shards don't decrease. And if you get the opportunity, use your skills and ultimate on the enemy backline. And make sure to frequently hit enemies with his skills, whether they're tanky or squishy, besides maintaining your shard stacks. Skill 1 and Skill 2 also deal a lot of damage, especially when you're in a snowball position. And for objectives, make sure to save your ultimate if you're in a safe position. But if you're being zoned, especially if the enemy zoning you can be killed, don't hesitate to use your ultimate on them. If the situation gets too pressured, I recommend continuously damaging the objective with a skill from a distance, because Aimon Ultimate deals a lot of damage, especially when combined with Retribution. The key to team fights is to use your basic attacks and skills on enemies with low crowd control, and make sure you have plenty of backup from your team if the enemy high crowd control heroes engage. And because this hero only has camouflage and no real escape skill, you can use this hero to counter him. Next, we have Aulus. Aulus is a hero whose main role is fighter. Although this fighter hero can be quite difficult to use in team fights during the early game if he hasn't unlocked his ultimate yet. Once you unlock his ultimate, it becomes much easier to join team fights, even though his ultimate has a fairly long cooldown. For his passive, Aulus can release a straight-line attack like this when he hits an opponent. To trigger it, you can use a basic attack or any skill. Then wait for 3 seconds and your stacks will reach 4 like this. To maintain the stacks, you can do the same thing you do to trigger his passive. For skill 1, Aulus runs for 5 seconds like this and also removes any slow effects applied by enemies. At the beginning of the run, Aulus can still be affected by high-level crowd control for 2 seconds. However, if he isn't interrupted, he becomes immune to crowd control for the remaining 3 seconds. For skill 2, Aulus slams the ground with his hammer, creating a fan-shaped area like this. If you hit an enemy, it unlocks the second phase. In the second phase, Aulus jumps and deals damage in the direction you aim. And for his ultimate, Aulus slashes 5 times in a fairly large area. On the final slash, the area and damage increase significantly. While using his ultimate, Aulus also gains 40% damage reduction. The combo is quite simple. Use skill 1 until you become immune to crowd control. Then follow up with skill 2 and immediately use your ultimate. After that, use basic attack and use skill 2's second phase to chase the enemy if they try to run away. For farming, you can use skill 2 to maximize your damage against creeps. Once you reach level 4, immediately help your side lane because Aulus becomes really strong after unlocking his ultimate. But don't get too confident when playing this hero, especially against tanky heroes. You'll need Sea Halberd, especially if you're fighting them alone. For objectives, you only need to use skill 2 because its passive is enough to deal with Turtle or Lord. You can also use his ultimate if you sense an enemy nearby, or if there are enemies around, to increase your damage and maximize your retribution timing. Since this hero is rarely encountered, enemies might not know how to deal with him and end up doing something like this. For team fights, make sure to target the enemy backline and stay away from heroes with high burst or DPS. If you force the fight, you'll probably end up losing like this. And if you're up against this hero, pick a hero with strong early game damage so you can stop him from snowballing. Next, we have Akai. Akai is a pure tank hero, but despite being a tank, he can still deal quite a lot of damage because of his passive, which deals additional damage when he lands a basic attack. To trigger his passive, you simply need to use any of his skills. For Skill 1, Akai charges toward the target in the direction you aim and knocks them airborne like this. And for Skill 2, Akai smashes the ground like this, dealing damage and slowing the enemies by 45% for 2 seconds. For his ultimate, Akai can escape from almost all crowd control effect, except suppression and freeze. Then Akai spins like this, and if he hits an enemy, they'll be pushed back. You can also use his ultimate to pin enemies against a wall, and also, you can use Skill 1 to adjust the direction you push the enemy. The combo is quite simple. Start with Skill 1 to knock the enemy airborne, then move your analog stick behind them. From there, push them either toward your base or into a wall, depending on the situation. End the combo using Skill 2 to slow them down. For farming, I recommend using Skill 2 because it has a shorter cooldown than Skill 1. And if your jungle is being invaded like this, you don't need to be afraid, especially if you're level 4 and have your buff. Just wait for the enemy to get close, then combo them, because you're already positioned near the wall. You also should not hesitate to use your ultimate, even though it has a long cooldown, especially when you're in a position where your team can back you up like this. For objectives, make sure your ultimate is available, because it can be your backup if you get caught by enemy crowd control like this. You can also use your ultimate to make it harder for the enemy jungler to secure the objective, since you can knock them back and prevent them from using retribution freely. And if you're in a team fight but you're too far from the enemy backline, just target the enemy who is causing the most trouble for your team. This can disrupt their team fight and give your team more space to play. However, if you're already close to the enemy backline, don't hesitate to pick them off, especially if you have backup. Because this hero can be quite annoying, especially with his ultimate. You can use these hero to counter him and stop his ultimate, especially when he's playing in the jungle. Lastly, we have Alucard. Alucard is a semi-assassin fighter hero with high lifesteal and an assassin element from his passive. Every time he uses a skill, Alucard can dash in the direction you aim. For Skill 1, Alucard jumps like this, dealing damage and slowing the target by 40% for 2 seconds. And for Skill 2, Alucard spins and deals damage to enemies in the area he hits. For his ultimate, Alucard does a pull like this. If it hits an enemy, it slows them and reduces their defense. He also gets 50% cooldown reduction on his other skills for 6 seconds. If you press the ultimate again, Alucard performs a slash like this. For the combo, it's pretty much up to you. Just remember, if you're close to the enemy, use your ultimate to slow them down and avoid enemies with high crowd control. For farming, you can use Skill 2 because it has a short cooldown and deals high damage. When taking an objective, Make sure you have skill 1 ready in case the enemy targets you. For team fights, don't be afraid to engage, especially when the enemy is grouped up inside your base like this. But don't get too confident and dive in, because this hero is very easy to counter, especially when you're fighting in the enemy base. Instead of always moving forward, you can also use skill 1 to hit and run like this, so you take less turret damage and can avoid enemy skills. Countering this hero is pretty easy. You just need to use a tank hero with high crowd control, or any hero that can make it difficult for Alucard to move. For the first letter B, we have Baxia. Baxia is a pure tank hero, but he can still deal quite a lot of damage. He also has a support tag because of his passive, which reduces the enemy healing effect and works like these 3 items. To trigger it, you simply need to use any of his skills. For skill 1, Baxia can jump like this, and you can control the direction of the jump using the skill 1 analog stick. If he hits an enemy, they be stunned for 0.8 seconds and slightly knocked back. And if you hit a group of enemies close together, you can hit them all at once, like this. For skill 2, Baxia throws his shield and deals damage. If the skill misses the target, it will have a long cooldown. However, if it hits the target, the cooldown is only 1.2 seconds. I recommend saving skill 2 if you're not confident you'll hit the target, so you don't waste the skill. And for his ultimate, Baxia runs like this for 10 seconds, leaving a trail of fire behind him. If an enemy touches the trail, they'll be slowed by 15%. The combo is quite simple. Use skill 1 to charge into the enemy group, and once you land the hit, immediately use your ultimate, then move around them and use skill 2 when needed. For farming, use skill 2 because it has a very short cooldown and deals quite a lot of damage. And for objectives, you only need to use skill 2 if you're the one starting it, because skill 1 is better saved for chasing enemies like this. For team fight, if you're the tankiest hero on your team, don't be afraid to target whoever is in front of you. Start the team fight and let the enemies use their skills on you, making it easier for your team to follow up. And if you have a Carmilla on your team like this, and she uses her ultimate on multiple enemies, just target one enemy because you can stun them all. If an enemy tries to run away, chase them with skill 1 so your team can follow up. And to counter this hero, you can use these heroes to make it harder for him to join team fights. Next, we have Benedetta. Benedetta is a semi-fighter assassin hero, although I honestly don't know where the fighter part comes from, because all of her skills and passive are basically just dashes. Anyway, Benedetta passive is quite unique. When you hold the basic attack button, it fills up the bar below her HP, which is shaped like a sword, and you can also charge her passive using all of her skills. For skill 1, Benedetta releases a fan-shaped attack like this. If you hit an enemy in the middle, it deals more damage than hitting them on the side. It also slows enemies by 60% for 0.5 seconds. Hitting the middle and the side of the skill fills her passive by different amounts. and the difference is pretty noticeable. Also, the more enemies you hit with skill 1, the more her passive gets filled. For skill 2, Benedetta becomes immune to crowd control and damage for 0.8 seconds. If her skill 2 hits an enemy while they are using a crowd control skill, that enemy will be stunned for 1.5 seconds. For her ultimate, Benedetta charges forward and creates an area like this. If an enemy is hit by the area, they'll be slowed by 50%. Her ultimate also makes her passive charge faster, like this. And the more enemies you hit with the area, the faster you can activate her passive. For the combo, it depends on the situation. Use your ultimate on grouped up enemies, especially when your roamer gets a good opening. Then follow up with skill 1 and her passive, and use skill 2 if the enemies try to control you. You can also use minions to charge your passive faster if the enemy has a lot of dashes and can easily dodge your ultimate. For farming, charge your passive first, then use skill 1 because it deals the most damage. And don't forget to always take advantage of your team crowd control during team fights to maximize your damage, especially since you're using retribution. For objectives, you can use the skill 1 and retribution combo to secure the objective more easily. You can also use your ultimate to take the objective faster. And here, Glue tried to interrupt us while we were taking the objective, so I went to help Cho. But I forgot that the enemy had Balmond as the EXP laner, so I went back and secured the objective instead. For team fight, you can use minions like I mentioned earlier and target the enemy backline. Since she's playing as a jungler, these heroes can make it harder for her to activate her passive. Next, we have Balmond. Balmond is a pure fighter hero with high durability and HP recovery because of his passive, where killing a minion or creep gives him 5% of his max HP, while getting a kill or assist gives him 10%. For skill 1, Balmond charges in the direction you aim and slows enemies by 40% for 3 seconds. For skill 2, Balmond spins and gains 15% movement speed for 3 seconds. If it hits an enemy, each hit reduces their physical defense. This effect also applies to multiple enemies within the area. For his ultimate, Balmond unleash a fan-shaped attack like this. If you hit an enemy with less than 30% HP, it deals true damage and instantly execute them. The combo is quite simple. Use skill 1 to approach the enemy, then stick to them with skill 2. Once you feel their HP is below 30%, immediately use your ultimate to execute them. For farming, you can use skill 2 because it has high damage and a short cooldown. Once you reach level 4, immediately help another lane. And here, I got really lucky because the enemy was already low on HP, so I was able to finish them off immediately. And when taking an objective, you can use the ultimate and retribution combo to secure it easily without having to contest retribution with the enemy jungler. You can also take objectives without using retribution, but make sure the enemy jungler isn't nearby, because retribution deals more damage than Balmond ultimate. And for team fight, all you need to do is keep spinning and use your ultimate when the enemy's HP is low. Yeah, literally just keep spinning. Next, we have Bane. Bane is a fighter-type hero with a semi-mage playstyle. This hero is quite unique because you can build him in 2 different ways, fighter or mage, with a fighter build. You'll have more damage from his passive. Skill 1, and the ultimate. And with a mage build, you'll have stronger healing from Skill 2, and more burst damage from its second phase, and also more damage from his ultimate. Anyway, for his passive, you need to use one of Bane's skills to gain a stack, with a maximum of 2 stacks. Once you have a stack and use a basic attack, Bane will attack like this. I recommend using a physical build because of this passive. For Skill 1, Bane fires a cannon like this and slow the enemy. If the reflected cannon hits them, it deals double damage. And for Skill 2, Bane heals himself and gains 50% movement speed. If you press it again, Bane will spray like this. Make sure to use the second phase when the bar is full to maximize the damage. For his ultimate, Bane summons a shark that travels through an area like this, knocking enemies airborne for 0.6 seconds and slowing them by 75%. For the combo, this hero doesn't really have a specific combo. If you're using a physical build, you can just spam your skills and passive on the enemy. For a mage build, make sure your Skill 2 and ultimate hit the target. For farming, use Skill 1 and shoot it into the air 7 seconds before the buff spawns. That way, when the buff appears, you'll have 2 passive stacks and can use Skill 1 again for maximum damage. You should also use Skill 1 or Skill 2 on bushes to check for enemies and keep your passive stacks at 2. And for Skill 1 bounce, you can also use minions like this, and it will always bounce toward the hero closest to the minion. For objectives, you only need to use Skill 1 and 2, because your ultimate is better saved for when you get cornered like this. And be careful if your team doesn't have a high burst hero, because Bane can be really hard to kill once he gets a lead. If you meet this hero, you can counter him with a high burst hero because this hero doesn't have good escape skills. Lastly, we have Vidssss. Vidssss is a semi-fighter tank hero whose passive gives him 4 to 10 hybrid defense per stack. To build up his passive, simply use any of his skills. However, it also comes with a downside. Vidssss' hitboxes gets larger, making him easier to hit. For Skill 1, Detna releases oil and then ignites it like this. Every 2 passive stacks increase the skill range, up to a huge range like this. For Skill 2, Vidssss fires a missile, and if it hits an enemy, they'll be slowed and pushed toward Vidssss if they're hit by the spray. And for his ultimate, Vidssss charges up like this. The longer you hold it, the farther Vidssss can dash. And Vidssss is also immune during this time. If you release it without hitting anyone or miss the target, the ultimate goes on a 50% cooldown. But if it hits an enemy, Vidssss immediately gains 10 passive stacks, and Detna suppresses the enemy when he swallows them. You can also aim the enemy toward a wall or another enemy to stun them. For the combo, start with Skill 2, follow up with Skill 1. Then immediately use your ultimate to swallow the enemy and aim them at a wall or another enemy. You can also use your ultimate first to surprise the enemy. Then follow up with Skill 1 and Skill 2 to push them toward you. For farming, you can use Skill 1 because Skill 2 is mainly for crowd control. And if the enemy makes a mistake like this, don't rush your ultimate. Wait for them to use their battle spell, especially if they don't use Flicker. Then chase them with your ultimate. If you can kill them, don't hit them with the ultimate so you can get the cooldown back faster. For team fight, make sure to ultimate the enemy closest to your team so you can get backup. But my team didn't have anyone to pressure the enemy backline, so I had to sacrifice myself to give my team a free opening. For objectives, just use skills 1 and 2. Save your ultimate for annoying enemies like this, especially when you outnumber them at the objective. Since he's in a jungler, you can counter this hero with heroes that have a high damage and high mobility. For the letter C, we have Cyclops. Cyclops is a pure mage hero with very fast cooldowns because of his passive. Whenever you hit an enemy with one of his skills, it reduces the cooldown of his skills like this. And if you already have cooldown reduction items, you can spam his ultimate like this. And for skill 1, Cyclops releases 2 Stardust Disc in the direction you aim. And for skill 2, Cyclops releases 5 energy bubble like this and gains 50% movement speed, which gradually decays over 2 seconds. The bubble will automatically target an enemy if they're one nearby and within your vision. For his ultimate, Cyclops fires an energy ball that chases the enemy like this. If it hits an enemy, they'll be immobilized for 0.75 to 1.5 seconds, depending on the distance. The farther away the enemy is when hit, the longer the immobilization lasts. For the combo, there's actually no specific combo because you can just spam your skills with this hero. But you can start with your ultimate to immobilize the enemy, then chase them with skill 2 and finish with skill 1. For farming, you can use either skill 1 or skill 2, because I tested both in custom and in the early game. They both took around 18 seconds to clear 1 creep. If you're playing this hero, you need to be careful when fighting in the early game, especially against strong early game heroes. Try to avoid the enemy skills as much as possible so you don't lose any gold. And always farm in the early game so you can get your items faster. For objectives, if you don't have enough cooldown reduction yet, save your ultimate in case the enemy tries to interrupt you, so you can still use it to escape. If there are no enemies around, you can use it like this to help secure the objective. However, once you reach the late game, you're free to use your skills more often, especially since you already have your core items. For team fight, target enemies who are out of position, especially non-tanky heroes. Also, make sure you've bought at least brute force breastplate, because it gives you decent survivability against physical burst heroes like this. To counter this hero, use a high damage hero in the early game to prevent him from getting too much gold. You can also use a strong late game hero to make sure he doesn't carry the game into the late game. For the letter D, we have Dieroth. Dieroth is a pure fighter hero with high HP regeneration. For his passive, Dieroth performs a spinning attack like this after 2 basic attacks, and it also restores his HP when it hits an enemy. There's also a bar underneath Dieroth HP that enhances his skill 1 and skill 2. To fill the bar, you can either wait for it to fill up naturally, or speed it up by using basic attacks or one of his skills. For skill 1, Dieroth unleashes a burst strike in the area you aim, slowing enemies by 25% when enhanced by his passive. It gets a longer range and doubles the slow effect. For skill 2, Dieroth dashes and knocks the enemies back, and when you use it again, he dashes toward them and reduces their physical defense when enhanced by his passive. The second phase deals additional damage, gets increased range, and also applies an additional slow effect. And for his ultimate, Dairoth creates an area like this and unleashes a powerful strike. If it hits an enemy, they'll be slowed by 55% for 0.8 seconds. The combo is quite simple. Use skill 2 to dash toward the enemy, then use it again to close the gap. Follow up with skill 1 to slow them down, then finish with your ultimate. For farming, if you're only clearing a single creep, you can use skill 2 because it's way faster. For the purple buff, I rather use skill 1 because it hits both creeps. If the enemy doesn't have a high crowd control heroes, you should play aggressively because this hero is very strong in the early to mid game. And don't forget to avoid the enemy's crowd control skills. Even though you're really strong in the early game, don't get too reckless and end up dying for no reason. For objectives, make sure to target the enemy jungler, especially if you have the early game advantage, like this. I immediately rushed him while his teammates were far away. However, if the enemy disappears from the map and they have a lot of crowd control, you can use the ultimate and retribution combo so they don't have time to react. For team fights, you should avoid the enemy's strongest crowd control skill first. Once they've used it, you can go in and out of the enemy's turret range to avoid getting hit by crowd control. Keep doing this until the enemies start making mistakes one by one. And if you're facing this hero, you can use a hero with strong crowd control to make it harder for him to move, especially when he's playing as a jungler. For the letter E, we have Esmeralda. Esmeralda is a semi-mage tank hero with high HP regeneration because of her passive. When you use her skills, she gains a shield that can be converted into HP. Her passive is mainly triggered through skill 1. She also ignores enemy shields, and the more shields she absorbs, the stronger her own shield becomes. For skill 1, Esmeralda gains a shield like this and also gets 40% extra movement speed for 4 seconds. For skill 2, Esmeralda dances like this, and if it hits an enemy, they'll be slowed by 20% for 1.5 seconds. It can also reset the cooldown of skill 1 when it hits an enemy or creep. For her ultimate, Esmeralda charges up energy, and the longer you hold it, the farther she can dash. Once you release it, Esmeralda dashes in the direction you aim and immobilizes enemies in the area for 1 second. The combo is quite simple. Start with skill 1 to activate your passive. Then follow up with your ultimate to immobilize the enemy. Use skill 2 for additional damage. Then use skill 1 again to activate your passive once more. For farming, you can use skill 2 to clear them faster. And once you reach level 4, you can go straight to the EXP lane, especially if the enemy is using a tanky hero. Also, be careful when playing a mid laner with a shield, because Esmeralda can easily take you down. For the objective, you can use skill 2 and skill 1 only, because your ultimate is better saved to chase enemies or escape if needed. However, once you reach the late game, you can use all of your skills freely because your cooldowns are very short. For team fights, you can hold your ultimate to pressure the enemy backline and prevent them from helping their front line. If the bar is about to run out, you can release it on the front line instead. Also, if your roamer has strong crowd control, it'll be much easier. Just aim your ultimate at the enemies your roamer stun, then release it. To counter this hero, use a hero with strong crowd control and high damage, especially when she's playing as a jungler. For the letter F, we have Fanny. Fanny is a pure assassin hero, and with this hero, you can fly around like this. And for her passive, the faster Fanny flies toward an enemy, the more damage she deals. For skill 1, Fanny spins and deals damage like this. For skill 2, Fanny releases a cable like this. If it hits a wall, Fanny will be pulled toward it and reducing her energy by 2. If it hits an enemy, she will spin around them like skill 1 and restore a little energy. If you release 2 cables forward, Fanny will fly straight like this. And if you aim at the 3rd cable next to Fanny obstacle, she will turn like this and so on. For her ultimate, Fanny leap toward the target like this. If the enemy is hit by the spin from skill 2, they'll take 30% additional damage from her ultimate. However, you need to aim your ultimate carefully, because it can hit a creep instead if you don't aim it properly. For the combo, this hero doesn't really have a specific combo. You can focus on practicing your accuracy and learning how to control your cables, and you can even rotate around the map to build your muscle memory. If you really want a combo, first use skill 2 to control your flight direction and make sure you hit the enemy. Then follow up with your ultimate. Use skill 1 and finish with skill 2 to turn back. For farming, you can use skill 1 because if you use skill 2 without skill 1, you'll just keep dashing around like this. After clearing the jungle, head straight to the enemy's orange buff and call your team over for a higher chance of success. If they still refuse to recall, punish them and take them down. And always check your purple buff cooldown, so you don't end up doing something silly like this. If your purple buff and the objective spawn at the same time, prioritize the buff first, but if your team is already pushing the enemy back, head straight to the objective and secure it. Since this hero is really strong in the early to mid-game, don't waste your early power spike, and try to take down the enemy whenever you get the chance. For team fight, focus on the squishy enemies, because this hero is very strong against squishy targets, especially since he doesn't have a strong crowd control. Even if there are tanky heroes next to her, don't hesitate to target the squishy enemies, especially if they don't have a strong crowd control. And if the enemy team is fully grouped up, bait out their crowd control skill first, then go back in and finish them off. And if you've snowballed, make sure to invade the enemy's purple buff frequently, so you don't have to wait for your own buff to respawn before taking a team fight. If you're facing this hero, you can use a hero with crowd control that can stop dashes, or a hero with point-and-click crowd control like this. Next, we have Fredrin. Fredrin is a semi-tank fighter hero whose passive allows him to heal. Whenever he gets hit by an enemy or creeps, he gains rage. His passive has 2 stages. The first stage is when he takes damage, and if he keeps getting hit by high DPS attacks, he can eventually enter rage mode. In rage mode, he can heal by attacking enemies, and his ultimate also deals more damage. Fredrin also has combo points. You can gain them by hitting enemies or creeps with skill 1 or skill 2. With 1 combo point, you can unlock skill 3, while having 3 or 4 combo points unlocks both skill 3 and his ultimate. For skill 1, Fredrin stabs forward in the direction you aim, When hitting an enemy will slow them by 30% for 2 seconds. After using Skill 1, his next basic attack gets increased range for 6 seconds. For Skill 2, Fredrin dashes in the direction you aim and gives a short knockback. If you use it again, it will airborne the enemy for 0.3 seconds. The effect will also disappear if you stay idle for 6 seconds. For Skill 3, Fredrin taunts enemies in an area like this. If it hits an enemy, they'll be taunted for 1 second, and Fredrin also gains additional defense for 3 seconds. And it also reduces the cooldown of Skills 1 and 2 and consumes 1 combo point. For his ultimate, Fredrin has a fan-shaped area like this, then slams the ground when you use it. If an enemy is hit by the center of the area, they will take double damage. For the combo, you can get at least 3 combo points from creeps, then dash toward the enemy and taunt them using Skill 3. Finish them with your ultimate, and if they're still alive, use Skill 1 to deal additional damage and finish them off. For farming, you can use Skill 1 because it deals additional damage to creeps. If there's a lone enemy, just charge straight at them, especially if they're squishy and don't have any escape skills. For the first objective, if you're confident, you can just use Skill 1 and Retribution, while saving your ultimate as a backup in case you need it. However, for late-game objectives like Lord, I suggest using your ultimate to reduce the chance of the enemy jungler stealing it from outside your vision. For team fight, you can act as bait to draw the enemy towards you while your teammates back you up like this. However, I wouldn't recommend trying this in solo rank, because I've failed to pull this off twice when my teammates didn't pick up on what I was trying to do. To play it safer, you can target the enemy backline. If they're already revealed by vision, you will have a lower chance of dying for nothing. If you're up against Fredrin, you can use a hero with crowd control immunity and high damage, making it harder for Fredrin to engage in team fights. Next, we have Freya. Freya is a pure fighter, but unlike most fighters, she relies heavily on attack speed because of her passive. Every time she consumes 1 sacred orb, her next attack gains 100% additional attack speed. To trigger this effect, you can use Skill 2, which consumes 2 sacred orbs. For Skill 1, Freya jumps toward the target and knocks enemies airborne for 0.4 seconds. For the Skill 2, Freya charges forward and slashes like this. If it hits an enemy, they'll be slowed by 30% for 0.5 seconds. Also, when your sacred orbs run out, you won't be able to use Skill 2 again until at least 2 sacred orbs have been restored. And for her ultimate, Freya leaps into the air and becomes immune to crowd control like this. She also gains increased attack range, recovers HP, and deals additional damage with her basic attacks. On top of that, enemies hit by her ultimate are slowed and slightly knocked back if they're in her path, and the enemies at the landing point will be knocked back a little further. The combo is quite simple. You can dive into the enemy using your ultimate, then immediately use Skill 2. After that, weave in 2 basic attacks before using Skill 2 again to maximize your damage. If the enemy tries to escape, chase them with Skill 1 and finish them off. For farming, use Skill 2 since it deals 50% extra damage to creeps. Even though this hero is very strong in the early game, you shouldn't dive enemies under their turret, especially if you're not playing with a full squad, because there's a high chance your teammates won't follow up. If there's a squishy enemy without crowd control in your jungle, you can immediately use your ultimate to dive onto them and eliminate them, especially if they're far from their base. For objectives, you only need to use Skill 2, since Skill 1 and your ultimate are better saved for chasing or escaping from enemies like this. For team fight, you can use Skill 1 and Skill 2 to engage an isolated enemy if your team is nearby. Then, use your ultimate to dive onto the enemy backline when they come in to help. You can also be the front line for your team when pushing a turret. Just make sure you can either secure a kill or force the enemy to use their spells, so your engage isn't wasted. If you're up against Freya, you can use a hero that can lock her movement during her ultimate, making it harder for her to dive your backline. For the first letter, G heroes, we have Guinevere. Guinevere is a fighter who deals magic damage. She has a passive where using basic attacks or skills fills the red bar under her HP. Once the bar is full, her next basic attack becomes enhanced like this. Guinevere also has a stack mechanic. Hitting enemies with her enhanced basic attack or skills applies a mark like this. Once you have 3 marks on an enemy, you don't need to apply Airborne first to trigger the Airborne effect on her ultimate. For Skill 1, Guinevere releases an energy orb like this. If it hits an enemy, they'll be slowed by 25% for 1.2 seconds, and Guinevere's skill cooldowns will also be reduced by 1 second. For Skill 2, Guinevere leaps in the direction you aim. If she hits an enemy or creep, the target will be stunned and knocked airborne for 1 second. If you cast it again, Guinevere leaves behind a shadow like this. If the shadow is hit by an enemy, it will fill up her passive bar. And for her ultimate, Guinevere deals AoE damage like this and becomes immune to crowd control for 2 seconds. However, don't move the joystick while casting it, as doing so can cancel your ultimate like this. You can also combo your ultimate with your teammate's airborne effect or your skill 2, allowing Guinevere ultimate to trigger its airborne effect like this. There are many combos you can use. For the basic combo, if your skill 2 hits the enemy, immediately follow up with the skill 1 to increase your damage and finish with your ultimate to knock them airborne. If your passive is ready, you can also use a basic attack to deal even more damage. For chasing enemies who are a bit farther away, you can use skill 2 toward them. Then follow up with the enhanced basic attack to close the distance. After that, use skill 1 to make it harder for the enemy to escape, and keep attacking until you trigger your next passive. Then, use your ultimate to knock them airborne like this. For farming, you can use skill 1 because it has a short cooldown and deals more damage than skill 2. And if you want to contest an objective, you can target the enemy EXP laner first, since Guinevere is also very strong in the early game, especially if the enemy EXP laner isn't too tanky. You can easily one-shot them with your combo. However, in this case, the enemy jungler was standing in the same spot as their EXP laner, so I accidentally got a double kill. Keep pressuring the enemy EXP laner so they have a harder time contesting objectives and participating in team fights. For team fight, if the enemy backline is separated from their front line, pressure the backline to isolate them. Once their front line is down, you can finish off the backline if they still try to engage. To counter Guinevere, you can use a hero like this to make it harder for her to dive into your backline. Lastly, we have Gusion. Gusion is a pure assassin who deals magic damage. He has a passive where every time you use a skill, you gain a stack, up to a maximum of 4 stacks. When you basic attack an enemy, the attack deals additional damage and restores HP like this. For skill 1, Gusion throws a dagger and marks the target like this. If you press it again, you'll dash toward the marked enemy. This skill can also be used on creeps and turtle. For skill 2, Gusion throws out 5 daggers like this. If an enemy is hit by 1 dagger, they'll be slowed by 6%. If they're hit by all 5, they'll be slowed by 30% for 2 seconds, making pretty hard for them to escape without dash or blinks. You can also press the skill again to recall the daggers, or simply wait for them to return automatically when the duration ends. For his ultimate, Gusion blinks and resets the cooldowns of skill 1 and skill 2. If you press it again, Gusion will slide like this. If you used skill 2 before casting your ultimate, you can throw up to 10 daggers like this. However, skill 1 will reset its mark when you use your ultimate. You can actually use skill 1 twice to throw 2 daggers, but this is quite tricky. The first dagger needs to be at the maximum range of skill 1. Then you immediately cast your ultimate and aim the second dagger at another target. This allows you to dash twice like this. For his combo, there's a quick burst combo and another one that takes a bit more time. For the first one, if you're up against a squishy hero, you can use this combo. Start by using skill 2 and landing at least 3 daggers on the enemy. Then immediately use your ultimate to reset your skills. Use skill 2 again to deal more damage. Then use skill 1 to close the distance and recall your daggers so they all hit the target. Finish with a basic attack if the enemy isn't eliminated yet. For the next combo, use this when fighting a tanky enemy. First, use skill 2 on the enemy as before. Then use skill 1 to dash toward them and recall your daggers. Follow it up with a basic attack. Then use your ultimate and repeat the same steps as before. For farming, you can use skill 2 to quickly clear creeps. And once you reach level 4, don't hesitate to dive the enemy tank, especially if you have your team backing you up. For objectives, you only need to use skills 1 and 2 for early objectives, since your ultimate is better saved for chasing enemies or escaping if the enemy tries to ambush you. And yeah, this isn't a real match, because in an actual match, I only recorded while using skill 2 and retribution to secure the turtle. Anyway, try to avoid the enemy roamer as much as possible, especially high crowd control ones, so you don't become an easy target. But you can also use the enemy roamer to get to the squishy targets, especially when their skills are on cooldown after you dive into them. To counter Gusion, you can use a hero with strong crowd control and long-lasting crowd control, making it harder for Gusion to dive into your backline.